If you're looking to start role-playing in Conan Exiles, it can be pretty tough to work out who you want to play. Unlike other roleplay environments such as GTA, Conan's fantasy setting doesn't really allow for loose self-inserts, and thus you'll want to craft a character that slots perfectly into the world. Today I'm going to teach you how I would plan out and create a character to roleplay with. So without further ado, let's get started. Of course, to start off, we're going to need a name. There are many things that go into a name, and it's a more important choice than just selecting something out of the blue. In a fantasy setting like Conan, names can be a great indicator of what sort of character you're choosing to play. This is a great chance to look through a wide variety of names and meanings to work out what suits your character best. If you are struggling, I personally really like fantasynamegenerators.com. This website offers name generators for all sorts of fantasy inspirations, alongside real names based on a wide variety of current and past cultures. The example character I'll be building for this video is a somewhat abrasive blacksmith with a cultural background reminiscent of medieval Germany. Therefore, by using the German name generator, I can come up with some names to use. I settled upon Jonas Latzky. If you're aiming for something a bit evil or something more religious, looking into the meanings of mythical or religious names can be a great way to find something that will suit your character. There are some names like that I would personally avoid just because they are a bit overused and very stereotypical, but you'd be surprised when you dig into stuff like that. You can find some really cool names that you've probably never even heard of. The next step is to establish a backstory for your character. Backstory is probably the most important aspect as it dictates your actions, behaviour, personality, and sometimes even your physical traits. For example, if your character was a soldier, he might be missing an eye causing disrupted vision, or he might be missing a few fingers causing him to fumble with items. Perhaps your character is a thief or a different type of criminal, and thus they're extremely apprehensive of town guards and authority figures. A common trap that a lot of people fall into is making the backstory too grand. Not every backstory needs to have massive sweeping influences on your behaviour. For Jonas Latzky, I'm going to be making him fairly normal. He's a Hyborian born to a typical family. He took up the trade of his father and eventually moved on to greener pastures to ply his trade. He's happy working metal and making sales, though he's not necessarily a great people person and come off as quite blunt or even rude. Why? Well, some people just are. There doesn't need to be a deeper reasoning for everything about the character. Even with a simple backstory like this, what are the potential consequences? Well, perhaps Jonas is a great blacksmith and is able to roleplay that his swords are expertly made and thus more prestigious than others. This might also influence his own choices in clothing and weaponry, and his house design and decoration too. However, as a downside to being somewhat abrasive, he might be pretty bad at bartering and cutting deals with customers, and may end up being disliked by other blacksmiths and customers around town. Your backstory is a really integral part of your character, and whilst not every backstory needs to fuel a deep character arc, it should be used to inform your character's personality and behaviour. This is also a great time to work on the physical design of your character, working their backstory into their appearance, including skin and hair colour based on ethnicity, tattoos, physical injuries, etc. Another critical aspect of character building is character traits, strengths and weaknesses. This is linked to your backstory, though additional strengths or weaknesses can be developed over time. Let's take what we just said about Jonas. His strengths are his work ethic, craftsmanship and his confidence. However, his weaknesses are his antisocial attitude, irritability and short temper. Those are solely informed by his personality traits, with some influence from his backstory. Strengths and weaknesses come from a variety of different places, whereas character traits usually come from the backstory. For another example, let's take a retired soldier. His character traits might be orderly, disciplined and efficient. His strengths might be endurance, physical prowess, swordsmanship and weapon maintenance. However, his downsides may be trauma due to battle exposure, any permanent injuries such as missing a foot, and perhaps a need for guidance and structure. This may mean this retired soldier makes for a great repairman for weapons and armour, or as an overseer for training future soldiers, but might have some personality quirks that make him unpredictable at times, and perhaps he can't jog or sprint due to his missing foot. As I mentioned earlier, strengths and weaknesses can be developed through a character arc. If you're playing as a peasant, you may wish to roleplay practicing your swordsmanship or archery. Starting off, you might want to deliberately miss attacks to roleplay incompetence, but as your character improves, you can begin to roleplay that improvement out. Strengths and weaknesses are incredibly important for a well-rounded character, as, in my opinion, there should never be a character that is an absolute expert at everything. By building these inherent benefits and drawbacks into the character, it may feel like you're closing off paths for you to explore, but you're also cultivating a convincing and deep personality and identity. Finally, one of the most important things for a good character are future plans and a sort of endgame. For Jonas Latsky, his endgame would be to build up his reputation as an esteemed blacksmith, and finally to become employed as the royal blacksmith for the king. Having a very clear goal like this gives your character a motivation to continue on, and allows you to set out clear goals and ideas. Of course, not every endgame has to be achieved and can be derailed through roleplay by other characters or events in the world. Let's take, for example, an evil sorcerer. Perhaps his endgame is to harness the powers of life and death to enthrall the world to his will. This endgame would be near impossible to achieve properly, though you might find a few people wanting to play along as one of your enslaved minions. However, getting everyone on the server to play that role outside of a planned story event would be pretty difficult, and thus that would be a great place to include other people in your endgame plans. Perhaps a brave protagonist discovers your efforts and works to stop them, or maybe the sorcery goes awry and the sorcerer is maimed by the dark magic. The endgame is critical to having a character with a fleshed out personality, and it's the best way to get other people involved with your own character's story. As a side note to something I mentioned earlier, it's very easy to fall into the trap of creating a character that has a really intricate backstory and is very unique and important. Sometimes some of the best characters are born out of simplicity. It's true, every world does need a hero, a dark sorcerer, or an assassin with a bleak past, but every world also needs the friendly alchemist, the disgruntled blacksmith, or just the hard-working miner. It's really easy to overlook just how important these characters are, characters that players may end up visiting almost every single time they play. There is just as much fun to be had role-playing these simpler roles, even if they never really end up having any major events happen to them. At the core of creating a character though, you must create something you're happy with. If you create a character you just don't enjoy playing as, you simply won't have much fun. Create something you're happy with and you'll always win, no matter the outcome. And there we have it, my personal guide on how to create a well-rounded roleplay character from the ground up. Thanks for watching. This sort of stuff does come naturally to some people. I've seen many roleplayers who just have a knack for creating great characters, though it can be a little harder for others. Hopefully this guide can give you a good jumping off point for getting into Conan Exiles Roleplay, though realistically these tips should work for roleplaying on any game. If you enjoy my content, all the links to my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Host Havoc affiliate page, NordVPN discount and NordPass discount are available in the description below. However, of course, you can simply just leave a like, a comment or subscribe. Any of those are very greatly appreciated. Patrons get a bunch of nice benefits, including sneak peeks of videos, your name in every video, custom made wallpapers in 1080p and 4K resolutions, full-size build blueprints, Discord roles and more. That being said, a massive thanks to all of our esteemed coffee cultists on screen now for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Again, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.